AITA for cutting off my family after they refused to reschedule for my son's funeral? Today I am 38 years old. When it all started almost a year ago, I was 37. I had been married to David for 15 years. He was 39. He worked as a manager at a regional bank and loved fishing more than anything. Well, almost more than anything, because above anything else were my son Thomas and I. Thomas was 12. He was smart, one of those kids who got straight A's without you having to nag them. And he played travel soccer in a youth league at the community center. We lived in a nice suburban house. It was without luxuries, but it was ours. 4 years. David also had a condo in the city downtown that he inherited from his grandmother. It was empty for a long time because we didn't need it. When my sister Emily married Josh 2 years ago, things got tight for them. He worked in sales at a car dealership. She was a receptionist at a dental office. They didn't earn much and were always moving from apartment to apartment or living with roommates. So David and I proposed something to them. We told them to move into the downtown condo rent-free, just take care of the HOA fees and utilities, and save up for their own place. I said it with conviction, the way those things are said among family. Emily is 3 years younger than me. She had always struggled with relationships, and Josh seemed like a decent guy. I wanted to believe that things were finally going to work out for her. My parents, Robert and Linda, live about 20 minutes away in a subdivision on the north side. My dad retired from the postal service. My mom worked for years in a public library and retired last year. They are already in their 60s and I thought we got along well. I spoke to them every few days. If my mom needed company to the grocery store, I was there. If my dad's hands hurt from arthritis and he couldn't fix something in the house, I went over. When money got complicated for them, I looked for ways to help. I really thought that was what a family was. That Saturday in January dawned cold. It was one of those days where the sun deceives you and the wind still cuts through your jacket. David woke up early, excited to take Thomas fishing at the reservoir up north. They had planned it all week because the forecast said the weather was going to be perfect. They left around 8 in the morning. David's SUV was loaded with their gear, the fishing rods, the cooler with sandwiches I had prepared for them, water and fruit. With the enthusiasm they carried, it seemed they were going to conquer the world. I remember I stood at the front door watching them drive out of the driveway, and I thought without exaggerating, how lucky I am. I stayed behind doing normal weekend chores. I vacuumed, did laundry, and went to the grocery store. Around 5 I started making dinner, hoping they would return at any moment. David always said that by 6 at the latest they would be back because Thomas had homework to finish. 6 o'clock arrived and nothing. 7 o'clock and nothing. I called David and it went straight to voicemail. It wasn't weird. By the lake and on those back roads the cell reception is spotty. At 8 I was already getting anxious, but I repeated to myself that maybe they lost track of time or had a flat tire. The doorbell rang at 8:47. I remember exactly because I looked at the microwave clock thinking it was a neighbor or a delivery driver. I opened the door, and there were 2 police officers standing on the porch. "Mrs. Parker?" The older one asked with a solemn face that froze me. There is a sensation that falls on you when you know, without anyone telling you, that something horrible happened. I felt it in that second. Yes, it came out almost voiceless. "I am Officer Miller. This is Officer Davis. Can we come in?" I let them into the living room. My legs were trembling as if they couldn't support me. Officer Miller sat in front of me on the sofa. The other stayed near the entrance like he was giving us space but remaining vigilant. Miller took a deep breath. "Mrs. Parker, I regret telling you this, but your husband and your son were involved in a serious traffic incident this afternoon." The words hit me as if they had physically pushed me. "Are they okay? Where are they?" I asked, and it even made me angry that my voice sounded so normal. Miller lowered his gaze to his notepad. The incident occurred approximately at 6:15 in the evening on the state highway, at an intersection near the county line. A driver operating under the influence ran a red light and impacted the driver's side of their vehicle. I felt I wasn't breathing. "Just tell me if they are alive," I told him, and my voice broke. Miller looked at me with a sadness that seemed permanent. "Your husband passed away at the scene. I am very sorry." The world went silent. I heard the words, but they didn't sink in. David gone. No, it couldn't be. He had given me a kiss in the morning. He was going to come back to tell me how many fish they caught. Thomas was going to walk through the door talking a mile a minute. And Thomas, I managed to say. The boy is alive, but he is in critical condition. He has significant injuries, including a severe traumatic brain injury. Because of the severity, they airlifted him to the Level 1 Trauma Center at the University Hospital. He is in surgery right now. I don't remember well what happened next. I remember Officer Davis drove me in the patrol car because I wasn't in a condition to drive. I remember Officer Miller drove my car behind us. I remember fluorescent lights, hallways, doctors in scrubs, words I didn't want to understand, traumatic brain injury, induced coma, guarded prognosis. When they finally let me see him in the ICU, Thomas looked tiny, truly tiny. He was in that huge hospital bed, surrounded by monitors with tubes, with his head bandaged, his face swollen and marked. Dr. Evans explained calmly that they had relieved pressure on the brain, but they couldn't know if he was going to wake up, nor when nor how. She was honest without being cold, which is appreciated and hated at the same time. That night from the hospital waiting room, I called my parents. My mom answered on the third ring. Morgan, it's very late. What's wrong? Thomas? I said. And I couldn't say more because I burst out crying as if I had broken inside. My love, what happened? Where are you? David. I managed to get out. There was an accident. David is gone. Thomas is in a coma. There was silence. A heavy silence, one of those that hurts more than any scream. Then my mom said, no, Morgan. Oh no. We are coming there. But they didn't get there at that moment. They arrived the next morning with tired faces, looking uncomfortable in the hospital environment. My dad hugged me clumsily, and my mom patted my shoulder. They stayed an hour. They asked the basics. How did it happen? What did the surgeon say? What is going to happen now? And then they said they had to leave because they needed to make some phone calls. We are going to help you with the arrangements, my mom told me. Don't worry about anything. I held on to those words like a life preserver. The next day, I called them to talk about David's funeral service. I was destroyed, and even so, decisions had to be made. And that was when I noticed something. My mom's voice was no longer the same. It sounded distant, as if she were talking about filing taxes. Morgan, it's just that we won't be able to help you with the planning. What do you mean no? I asked, confused. It's just that Emily and Josh are officially moving this week to David's condo, and we agreed to help them get settled in. I went blank. But what does that have to do with it? Mom, David just died. His funeral is more important than moving furniture. Of course it is, she said quickly, like wanting to close the subject. But we already promised, and you know how Emily gets when plans are changed. We will come to the service, don't worry, just that. We won't be able to help you with the organization. I hung up and felt alone in a way I cannot explain. My husband had passed away, my son was between life and death, and my family was worried about boxes, a moving truck, and not making my sister angry. I organized David's funeral alone. The funeral home, the flowers, the viewing, the service, the casket, the cemetery plot. Every decision I made with my head in pieces while they were helping Emily and Josh move into the condo in the city. The service was simple. People arrived. They said nice things about David. I listened and felt like I was watching someone else's movie. We buried him, and when it ended, my parents, Emily, and Josh arrived almost at the end. They stayed the minimum amount of time and left quickly. And there, something ugly started to be born in me. It wasn't hate yet. It was like a reality that was settling in my head, but I didn't want to see it. After David's passing, legally everything remained in my name. The house, the condo, and his retirement accounts. David had been very careful with finances and had a substantial life insurance policy. He left me financially stable. It was the only good thing in the middle of all that. I work at an accounting firm and decided to reduce my schedule to part-time. Money was no longer the problem. The only thing that mattered to me was being with Thomas. The neurologist told me that sometimes, even if they don't respond, they can hear. So every day I read to him. I read him whatever books he liked, adventure stories, even the homework the school sent because his teachers were being kind and kept passing it to me in case he woke up. Your math teacher says you are doing very well, I told him with Thomas's hand in mine. She is saving everything for when you return. I talked to him about the weekend football games, about what happened at school, about funny things I saw on TV. I talked to him about his dad. I told him David would be proud of him, that he was fighting with everything, but Thomas didn't respond. He breathed, his heart was stable, and the machines displayed numbers that I learned to watch as if they were a language. And even so, nothing. Not a hand squeeze, not a look, nothing. The doctors were kind but realistic. Brain injuries this severe rarely have a happy ending. Even so, I held on. 6 months passed. My life became a routine. Work in the morning, hospital in the afternoon, nights alone at the house. Emily and Josh were already well installed in the condo. Sometimes they called to thank me for letting them be there. But they never asked about Thomas. Never. Not a single time. A simple "how is he doing?" or "do you need anything?" My parents visited Thomas exactly 3 times in 6 months. 3. And each visit lasted about 20 minutes before they found an excuse. Hospitals make me nervous, my mom said. Or your dad is already tired, she also said. And the traffic on the interstate, they finished as if that justified everything. One Tuesday morning in July, Dr. Evans called me at work. I was reviewing some spreadsheets when the cell phone rang. "Mrs. Parker, this is Dr. Evans. I need you to come to the hospital as soon as possible." My heart sank. I left without thinking. I drove as best I could. When I arrived, the doctor was waiting for me outside Thomas's room, and by her face, I knew everything before she opened her mouth. "Mrs. Parker, I am so sorry. Thomas passed away approximately an hour ago. His body couldn't take it anymore." I felt a literal blow. I stumbled backward and had to hold on to the wall. "But he was stable," I said almost accusingly. "Yesterday I saw him the same as always. Sometimes with injuries so severe the body gives up," she explained, and her voice broke a little. There was nothing more we could do. "Truly I am sorry." I entered the room and hugged him for the last time. Thomas looked peaceful, like he was asleep. I hoped he would open his eyes and tell me what happened, like when he woke up from a nightmare. But no, my boy was gone. I drove back home and sat in the living room for hours, crying until nothing came out anymore. When I could finally breathe without drowning, I picked up the phone and called my parents. "Mom, Thomas died. Today." There was a pause. "Oh, Morgan. I'm sorry," my mom said. Her voice was flat, as if I had told her my refrigerator broke down. I froze but continued. "I need help with the funeral," I told her. "I can't do this alone again." "Well, that's going to be a problem," she answered, as if she were talking about a scheduling conflict. "We can't help you with that, and we won't be able to go to the funeral either." I thought I had heard wrong. "What? What do you mean you aren't going?" "Tomorrow we fly to the Caribbean with Emily and Josh. It's a family trip. We planned it for months." It was Tuesday. Thomas had just died, and my mom was talking to me about a flight the next day. I remained without reaction for a second, and then my voice came out like a low scream. "Mom, my son just died." "Your grandson just died. What do you mean you are going on a trip? You can move it." "Of course not," she said sharply. "Do you know how much money was spent on this? $8,000. It cannot be rescheduled. It's non-refundable." I felt my hands burning. "You are choosing a vacation over Thomas's funeral. Morgan, you are a strong woman. You will be able to handle this," she said as if giving me advice. "Just like you could handle David's funeral. You don't need us there. And the truth is that money cannot be thrown away." And she hung up on me. I stared at the cell phone with a fixed gaze, as if it were something I didn't understand. I felt as if I had been punched in the stomach. I didn't even have time to process it when the phone rang again. It was Emily. "Morgan, Mom called me," she said without greeting. "Look, yes, the thing about Thomas is very sad, but we aren't going to cancel the trip." She didn't sound sad. She sounded annoyed. "Emily, it's Thomas's funeral," I said, and I hated myself for sounding like I was asking for a favor. "He is your nephew. And I'm sorry, but that is your problem, not mine," she blurted out. And there I really ran out of air. "Besides, I'm pregnant. Do you understand me? This could be my last chance to rest before the baby is born. A baby moon. I have been waiting for months for this trip, and I am not going to lose it for this." I was so shocked that words didn't come out. "You have no right to ask us to cancel," she continued. "We already paid for everything. I need this rest. You resolve your things and leave us in peace." And she also hung up on me. I stayed in silence. In 10 minutes, my family made it clear to me that a beach was more important to them than my dead son, and that I was alone. But in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Clarity. As if finally my head settled. It's okay, I told myself. First I bury my son, then I see what I do with you all. I called my friend Sarah. As soon as she heard my voice, she didn't ask much. She arrived at my house and sat with me. Between the two of us, we organized Thomas's funeral. Again, I did it all, but this time I no longer expected my family to appear. I no longer expected support. I didn't even expect them to pretend they cared. Between the death certificate, the funeral home, and getting a plot in the cemetery, it went until Thursday. Thomas's viewing and burial were that Thursday morning. It was small. It was Sarah and I, some of David's colleagues from the bank who remembered Thomas from some gathering, and Mrs. Rodriguez, his teacher, who made the journey to be there. My parents sent a wreath. They weren't even capable of sending it themselves. It arrived with a short note printed, as if it were a transaction. I saw it and felt more anger than comfort. The chaplain spoke of the hope that Thomas was with his dad. I tried to hold on to that idea. I didn't cry in the chapel. I had already cried everything at home. At the funeral I felt a weird calm, as if I were watching my life from outside. When they lowered Thomas's small casket into the earth next to David's grave, I stood thinking that my family at that moment was surely entering a hotel lobby with a wristband, uploading photos, laughing, and ordering drinks by the pool. After the burial, Sarah told me she could stay with me. Thank you, I answered. But I need to be alone. I have things to do. And yes, I had things to do. That same day I drove to the condo in the city where Emily and Josh lived. I had keys. It was my property. I inherited it, I paid the property taxes, I decided. Before entering, I sat a minute in the car and wrote a brief email to Emily and Josh. I told them that starting that day the permission to use the apartment was revoked, and that their things would be stored and delivered. I took a photo of the sent email. I took photos of the door, the utility meter, the living room. Not for pleasure but for clarity. I entered and started to pack. I didn't throw anything, I didn't break anything, I didn't make a scene. I simply started. Clothes, shoes, books, documents, dishes, kitchen things, ornaments, that horrible lamp that Josh's mom had given them. Everything went into boxes, into bags, into whatever I found. I worked in silence with a calm that surprised me. It took me about 3 hours to pack their life. While I did it, I imagined them on the beach with the cell phone in hand, smiling, as if the world wasn't falling to pieces on the other side. I called a moving company and paid extra for an emergency same-day service. Then I drove to my parents' house. I also had keys from there for emergencies. For years, I told the movers to leave everything inside their house. In the living room, not on the patio, not outside but inside. And to leave it in a pile, boxes and bags one on top of the other. Just as it arrived, I returned to the condo and called a locksmith. I want to change all the locks, I told him. The deadbolt and the handle lock. Everything. The locksmith did it without asking too much since I had the deed and ID. He gave me new keys. The keys that Emily and Josh had were no longer going to work. Afterward, I went home and turned on my laptop. I opened the bank application and started removing automatic payments. For years, I had been covering things for my family, so many that I had even forgotten. I removed the autopay for my parents' car insurance. I stopped paying that supplemental health insurance that I covered because my mom said just in case. I canceled a subscription to a magazine that my dad received every month. I canceled the streaming service account that was on my charge because she never wanted to learn to put her own card on file, and I stopped making the direct transfer I made to her account for groceries. Then I went with Emily. Her family cell phone plan, which I paid since she was tight on money. Out with the help for the car note that I gave her since the wedding because I wanted them to start without so many debts. It's over. And the gym membership I gave her. Also, with every change I remembered the motive. It's just that everything piled up on us. It's just that this month was heavy. It's just that you earn better. It's just that it doesn't cost you. And suddenly I realized something. I was giving them nearly $3,000 a month. Every month, almost 4 years. My phone vibrated with notifications. Emily was uploading photos of the Caribbean to Instagram and Facebook. Emily and Josh on the beach, tanned, happy. My parents at a restaurant by the sea, smiling, raising glasses in a toast. Emily put on a photo caption. Grateful to be here with my beautiful family, the one that always supports me in everything. I stared at that phrase until my eyes burned. I took screenshots of everything, every photo, every phrase, not for gossip, because I wanted to remember that exact moment when I understood who they were. 3 days passed. I went to work, came back, ate dinner alone and waited. I knew they were going to return soon. And for the first time in months I felt I had control of something. Sunday night my phone started ringing. First my dad, then my mom, then Emily, then Josh, then my parents again. I didn't answer. I was in the living room separating Thomas's things to donate them and let the phone ring and ring. Then the voicemail started. My mom's voice tight with anger. "Morgan, what did you do? Why are all of Emily's things here? Call me right now." Emily almost screaming. "What is wrong with you? We can't enter the condo and our things are thrown in my parents' house. Call me or I'm going to report you." Josh trying to sound calm. "Morgan, there must be a misunderstanding. Call me to fix it." My dad confused. "Daughter, there is a disaster here. Please tell us what is happening." I deleted the messages without listening to them completely. Then I blocked their numbers, but they didn't give up. They called from other numbers, sent emails, messages through social networks. I blocked them too. Around 10 at night, I heard cars enter the driveway and footsteps, then loud knocks on my door. "Morgan, open up," Emily yelled from outside. "Open now." I peeked through the window. There were the 4 of them. My mom, my dad, Emily, and Josh. They looked tired, angry, and with recent flight faces. First they went to the condo with the suitcases, saw it didn't open, and from there went to my parents'. At my parents' house they found the pile in the living room and then came for me. I breathed deep. That conversation was going to happen whether I wanted it or not. And I was ready. I opened the door. Emily wanted to enter pushing, but I stood firm at the entrance. My mom passed anyway, as if my house were hers, and the others followed her. They stood in my living room looking at me as if I had committed a crime. "We have to talk," my mom said. And it didn't even sound like a request. Emily couldn't hold back. "What were you thinking?" She snapped at me. "Our things are at my parents' house," as if they were trash, "and we can't enter the apartment." I looked at her without raising my voice. "It is no longer your apartment." "What do you mean no?" she said, and her jaw dropped. "I changed the locks." I told her. "You no longer live there." Emily stayed blank for a second, then lit up. "You can't do that. We have rights." "There is no lease contract there," I answered. It was a favor, a permission, and I withdrew it. Josh took a nervous step. "Morgan, I understand you are hurt. Truly, but this isn't done like this. We don't have anywhere to go." I looked at him calmly. "You could have thought about that before telling me that my son's death was my problem, not yours." The silence was heavy. Emily lowered her gaze for an instant. "I was upset," she said, quieter. "I didn't say it like that." "Yes, you said it," I answered her. "And you also said you needed to rest before your baby was born. And that's why Thomas's funeral wasn't worth canceling a trip." My mom intervened, indignant. "Morgan, you are exaggerating. We know you are unwell, but that doesn't justify you doing this. You don't treat family like this." I let out a short laugh without humor. "Family," I said. "Truly, you come to talk to me about family?" My dad raised his hands like wanting to mediate. "Daughter, of course we are family. We have had problems, but this can be fixed." Emily, who until that moment was in defense mode, suddenly changed her face, looked at me fixedly, and said with a tone that disgusted me, "I understood. You already taught me a lesson. Not anymore. So give me the new keys and we leave it like that." I looked at her without blinking. "No." Emily froze. "What?" she said. "No." I repeated. "My decision is final. You no longer live there. Get another place." Emily put her hands on her belly as if that were a shield. "I am pregnant," she screamed. "We don't have anywhere to go. How are you going to kick out a pregnant woman just like that?" I felt a cold tiredness. "Did you think about that when you preferred the Caribbean instead of saying goodbye to Thomas?" Emily looked at me a second, and then her face twisted with anger. "I know what this is," she said with a hard voice. "You are jealous because I am going to have a baby? And your son died." The living room went silent. Even Josh stayed with his mouth open. Emily continued as if she were spewing poison. "You lost your mind since Thomas died. And now you take it out on me because I am pregnant and can continue with my life. You can't stand that I am happy while you keep crying for a boy, who the truth wasn't even that special? Something cold fell on my chest. There I did raise my voice like never before. Out I screamed. Get out of my house right now. My mom tried to fix it. Morgan, Emily isn't thinking right. You neither. You are grieving. You are sensitive and are making decisions that are going to hurt the family forever. When you calm down. I calmed down a while ago, I told her. I walked to the door and opened it wide. I am calmer than I have been in months. And if you really think I lost my head, then you shouldn't be here. Leave. My mom stayed a second and then let out what truly mattered to her. And the money, she said without being able to avoid it. You can't leave us like this. We count on that help. There was the truth. They didn't come to ask for forgiveness. They didn't come to talk about Thomas. They came because I stopped paying them. It's over. I said, the car insurance, the medical insurance, your payments, your card, the streaming services, everything. Emily's phone plan, her car note, her gym, everything. My mom started to cry. To cry for real. She didn't cry like that when I told her Thomas died. Morgan, please, we can't handle that. We are retired, our social security is not enough for us. And I looked at her calmly. You went into debt to go on vacation. You paid for it with a credit card and in installments. And even so, you told me my son's funeral was my problem. Now resolve it yourselves. My dad tried to speak, but nothing came out. Resolve it, I repeated. Like you told me, it is your problem. They left. Emily kept screaming outside that it was unfair, that she was going to look for a lawyer, that I was going to regret it. My mom cried, my dad walked looking at the ground. I closed the door, locked it, and felt something I hadn't felt since before the accident. Lightness, as if I had taken a weight off my body. 2 quiet weeks passed. They tried to communicate in 1,000 ways. Messages from unknown numbers, emails, letters, visits. I blocked, deleted, ignored, didn't open the door, didn't answer. Until Emily made a mistake. She published on Facebook a very long text saying I was cruel and vengeful. She said I had kicked my pregnant sister out of her house and had left my parents without support just because they went on a trip. She painted herself as a victim. She painted me as a person out of her mind. Her friends started to comment indignantly. Pregnant women need support, said one. What a lack of heart, said another. But then other people started to comment. People who did know, neighbors, acquaintances, people who were at David's funeral, people who knew the story of the accident and the months in the hospital. Mrs. Rodriguez, his teacher, wrote, I was at Thomas's funeral. They were not. And he was their grandson and their nephew. That lit the fuse. What do you mean they weren't there? Someone asked. Where were they? Asked another. And then people started to connect the dots. One remembered that Emily uploaded photos of the trip. Another said they saw my parents at the airport. Another asked for dates. And suddenly the story of oh poor Emily no longer held up. I was reading everything with my heart beating in my throat. I didn't want to make a spectacle, but I wasn't going to let them invent me as a villain when I had just buried my son. So I wrote a single comment. 1. Emily, you are right that the family relationship was already damaged. It was damaged when you, Josh, my mom and my dad, chose to go on vacation to the Caribbean instead of attending the funeral of my 12-year-old son. You told me his death was my problem, not yours, and that trip was more important than saying goodbye to Thomas. I hoped the resort was worth it. That was all. The comments exploded, people were horrified. Some apologized for having gone with the first version. Others complained to Emily and my parents. Emily deleted her post a few hours later. But it was too late. The screenshots were already circulating. And not just for gossip, for real indignation. 6 months have passed since then. I haven't spoken to any of them. First I resolved the condo thing. I put it in order and rented it to a young couple who pays market value. Leaving it borrowed was no longer an act of love, it was allowing abuse. Then I left my job, not from one day to the next, little by little. And yes, I started to travel, but not to show off, but because David and I always talked about doing it and there was never time. I went to the Grand Canyon, to Yellowstone, to Maine, to the Pacific Coast Highway, to the Smokies. I went to places where nobody knew me, where I could breathe without feeling that everything reminded me of what I lost. I write this from a coffee shop in Seattle. Outside it is cool and smells like rain. There are people passing with backpacks, couples talking quietly, normal life. And I, for the first time in a long time, feel I can exist without being in survival mode. When I finish this trip, I am going to move to a mountain town, maybe somewhere in rural Vermont. I always liked forests and silence, and there is nothing anymore that ties me to where I lived. My house has memories in every corner, and I need a fresh start. Sometimes people ask me if I miss my family. The honest answer is no. I miss the family I thought I had, the one I thought was going to hug me when my world ended. But that family didn't exist. The real family, the one that chose a beach instead of a child's funeral, that one I don't miss. And for the first time in my adult life I feel free. Free from people who got used to me solving everything. Free from those who confused support with entitlement. Free from those who valued money and comfort above love and loyalty. Free to build a new life with people who do know what it means to truly be there when it is needed most. Comment. Meaningful relationships are built on mutual respect, not just shared DNA. It takes immense courage to accept that the people we love might not always have our best interests at heart. Setting firm boundaries isn't an act of cruelty. It's a necessary step to protect your peace and well-being. True support goes both ways, and you never have to set yourself on fire just to keep others warm. There is profound freedom in walking away from situations that drain your spirit. You deserve to be surrounded by people who show up for you during your darkest hours, not only when it is convenient. Please remember that prioritizing your mental health is not selfish. It is essential for survival. I hope this reminds you that you have the strength to rewrite your story at any moment. May you always find the courage to choose your own serenity over the expectations of others. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.